Welcome back to the Let It Snow video series. We're on part 4. We're going to work on our filler blocks, our borders, and we're going to finish our project today. This is page 4 of the instructions. Your filler blocks, it says to cut them 3 by 3. Mine are cut at 3 1/4. It's just how I cut them. You want to put fusible on the back of these. If you're following the instructions, you can see there's 2 in one fabric and 2 in another. Mine are all different colors, so you'll see 4 different colors when I work on the filler blocks. You do want to put fusible on the back of these. I've already done that. I'll be using this silver color to quilt my filler blocks, and I'm going to do all 4 at the same time in an 8 by 8 hoop. For the batting, I cut 4 3.5 inch squares. There's my fabric, there's my batting. You have the measurements and quantities for your border fabrics. Mine are cut a little bit different because I'm using fat quarters, and I always cut mine wider. I find it easier if I have a little bit extra fabric to work with. You can see the little green heart, so these all have fusible on the back. All of my strips are cut the same length. There's different lengths given, but mine are all cut the same length because I'm using fat quarters. So I just cut the length of the fat quarter, which is about 22.5 inches long. For the inner border, it gave a width of 2 inches. I cut mine 3 inches wide. 2.5 inches would probably be better. The border file we're going to use is 1.5 inches wide. So when you only have 2 inches of fabric, that gives you a 1/2 inch to work with, which is a 1/4 inch on each side. It gets a little tight in the hoop. That's why I always cut mine bigger. When I do the inner border, I'm going to be using a white thread. I'll be using my 9.5 by 14 inch hoop. All of my strips are about that 22 inches in length. We'll do 2 hoopings, 4 strips per hooping. So we'll have a part 1 and part 2. We'll get it all done in 2 hoopings. I cut my batting 2 inches wide, and I'm going to use the 1 by 12 file, which when we load it, you'll see it's 1.5 inches wide, 11.74 inches long. You always want to pull these files and check this length measurement because the way they do their quilting to make it look continuous, depending on the pattern, sometimes the file length is different than what's given in the name of the file. For the outer borders, I'm going to do 4 hoopings. I can fit 3 in one hooping, but I still end up having to do 4 hoopings that way because I would be able to do 3 and then I have to do another hooping for the last remaining border. So I'll do 2 and 2. I'll be using this dark purple thread. My outer border fabric is a light purple, and I cut my batting 3 inches wide. I'll be using the 2 inch wide, which is what we're doing, a 2 inch border, 12 inch long file, which when we pull up the file on the machine, you'll see it's 2.5 inches by 11.75 inches long. If you're using the same threads that are in the instructions, just make sure you check your thread colors for these. We're going to start with the filler blocks. I have my light mesh cutaway loaded in my 8 by 8 hoop, hand tighten, screwdriver tighten, and I want to take a minute to say thank you to the person who sent me this Creative Notions hoop screwdriver. This is really interesting. I've never seen anything like this before. The screwdriver is right there on the inside. So when I'm using this to tighten my hoop, it's not going to slip and jab my hand. I usually use the regular screwdriver, and I have to be really careful that it doesn't slip. I don't like those weird round ones that come with the hoops. I find them hard to use. This is fantastic. It's not lightweight. It's not like a chintzy piece of plastic. It's a hard plastic, kind of rubbery feel, and it fits on like that, and then you can tighten your hoop and it won't slip off. So thank you so much for that. Let's load our files for the filler block. All the filler blocks is background quilting. We've done that before. These will be really easy. We need KDQ 491 Winter 11, and we need the 2 by 2 design. We use the same design for all 4 blocks. So I'm going to go ahead and set that, hit my edit, the border duplicate key, going to add one to the right, and then add a couple underneath. Now I know I did that fast, but we've done this several times throughout the video series, so you can go to earlier videos if you need to see me work through that slowly. And I'm adding space in between. That's good. Got that centered. I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to save it to my machine just in case. And we're ready to go. I have my silver thread on my machine. Right now there's a 7511 embroidery needle on here. I switched that in the last video for the lace snowflakes. I'm going to leave that on. It'll be fine. Light mesh cutaway. We've done all of this before. I'm going to set it all to music. All we're going to do is batting placement and tack down, trim, fabric placement, fabric tack down, do the quilting, and then we'll trim our blocks together. Here we go. These are done. Let's go trim our blocks. I already pulled off the tape. We need to get these out of the hoop. I'll show you how to use that. Slides right over. There we go. Fantastic, love it. Get your blocks out of the hoop, and the first thing I'm going to do is separate them. I've got them all separated. We need to trim these to 2.5 inches square, which is going to be right on that stitching line. We've trimmed blocks before, but I'll go ahead and do just one on camera. I can line up along the stitch line here and here, and then I can double check on this ruler. 2.5, 2.5. It's nice and square. You just have to hold it down. Since it's got the batting and the quilting, it's a little puffy. Just be careful with your trimming. We'll do the first 2 sides, and then I'm going to flip it, and I'll line up with the 2.5 and the 2.5. I do have a 2.5 inch square ruler, but I find this ruler a little bit easier to use for this. This side and this side. I'm going to cut the other 3 off camera and set them aside, and we'll work on our borders. We're going to start on our inner borders. We need KDQ 493 Winter 2 1 inch width. There's KDQ 493 Winter 2 and 1 inch width. The length of your border depends on the fabric you're working with and your hoop size. So if you're working with a 5x7 hoop and that's all you have, then you'll have to work with this 1x7. I picked the 1x12 because my border strips are about 22 inches long. So 12 plus 12, 24. It'll give me more than what I need, but it'll quilt my strip in its entirety, and it'll give me an opportunity to make an adjustment to the pattern when I go to sew it onto the quilt. So let's bring that border strip up. I'm going to hit set. I want 4 of these. I'm going to slide it over, edit, border duplicate. We need to change it to the left or right. I need 3 more. 1, 2, 3. And I want to go ahead and spread it out and maximize the space in my hoop. I'm going to save this to my machine. We'll hit OK, memory, save it to my machine. We're ready to go. I'm going to hit embroidery, but I want to show you something that's going to help make trimming these easier. Borders work like block by block quilting. We have a batting placement, tack down, fabric placement, fabric tack down, and quilting. Until I get to the quilting, I'm going to use a visible thread. I just pulled the brown thread. The reason we want to do this is when we go to trim our blocks at the end, there's going to be a line of stitching that's visible on the back. It's going to be 1.5 inches wide. That's the exact width we want to cut these. From the front, the visible stitch line that we're going to see is going to be 1.25 inches wide. So we don't want to cut these from the front. They're easier to cut from the back. Visible thread. Let's stitch the batting placement lines. We've got all of our placement lines. These are 1 inch wide. Now that makes sense. If you think about our finished borders, they're going to be 1 inch wide. So you don't want batting anywhere beyond that inch. My batting strips are longer than the placement line. That's fine. We're going to trim these. You want to make sure to cover your placement line, and then I'm going to add a piece of tape at the top. Next, we're going to stitch the batting tack down. Once your tack down lines have stitched, you want to trim the batting that's outside of the tack down line. This part of the batting you want to save for the next set of strips we're going to work on. We're going to join part 1 with part 2, so you'll be able to use this if you've cut long strips of batting. Batting is trimmed. We're going to stitch out the fabric placement line. Let's measure this line. It's 1.5 inches wide. That's really the only line you need to stitch in a visible thread. I have my white thread on my machine. We're going to cover the placement line with our fabric. I cut my fabric 3 inches wide, which is more than wide enough. 2.5 inches would be good. The instructions say 2 inches. Here's my ruler. If you cut it 2 inches, we'll use the strip here. You're going to have 1/4 inch extra on either side, which if you're comfortable with that, that's fine. But I find when I quilt the borders, because this batting is in the middle, when it runs the tack down here, the fabric kind of almost like rounds, and then it'll run the tack down here, and it's just too tight a squeeze for my personal liking. I've got all the strips laid out. You can tell they're pretty much end to end. I went ahead and cut the 2 in the middle to 2.5 inches wide. We're going to stitch the fabric placement lines. Everything is tacked down. Let's measure this. 1¼ inches. That's why I don't like to use these lines to trim, because if you want to do that and trim this 1½ inches wide and you're trimming from the front, you have to add 1/8 of an inch to each side. And I have done that before. I did that on the Star Spangled Beauty ladder quilt with a ruler that has 1/8 inch measurements, and it does work. But when we go to trim these, we're going to trim from the back, and we have that visible thread that's going to have the lines 1½ inches apart, which is going to be perfect. All that's left now for this part is the background quilting. These are all quilted. We're going to go over to the table. I'm going to show you how to join part 1 to part 2. I've got my hoop on the table. I'm going to go ahead and take the tape off, and we're going to get this out of the hoop. All we want to do right now is just separate the strips. Don't worry about trimming on the lines or anything. Just get your strips separated. When you're separating the strips, this extra piece of stabilizer here at the bottom, go ahead and trim that off. That'll be in the way for the next step, so you want to make sure to get rid of that. I've got these all separated. I'm going to set them aside for now. Re-hoop some stabilizer in your hoop, and we're going to go back over to the machine. I have my visible thread back on my machine. I'm going to stitch out the batting placement, place my batting, trim the batting, and then stitch the fabric placement line. I'll do all of that to music. After we stitch the fabric placement line, I'll show you how to join the strips. Once the fabric placement lines have stitched, we want to get this over to our table. And over at the table, we're going to match our strips. I'm going to take the first strip here, and I like to have the part that's quilted up here. Here's the plain fabric. I'll fold it like this, and I can see all the lines of stitching on the back. This is another reason why the visible thread helps. We're going to use this to line up. I've got the quilted part here. I'm going to fold this up. I can see all the little lines. I'm looking at the fabric tack down, and the top stitching line right there. I just sort of line it up, and then I roll the top down. Just like that. And then kind of roll it. You want everything to match. When we go to do the quilting on the machine, you will have the opportunity to hand crank your needle if you want to double check your placement. That looks good. Now I want to tape this, and you can see my fabric ends here. I'm just going to tape it. Let's do the next one. I'm going to line up the fabric placement lines. The top line, roll it down, trying to get them to match as close as possible, and then I want to tape that. I'm going to smooth it down, and I'm going to add a piece of tape here, and then I'll do that for the 2 remaining strips. We're back at the machine. As you're putting this onto your machine, make sure the top part of your strips goes over and falls down the back. You don't want it to get caught underneath your hoop, because then you'll have to start over. Now I have a bit of a problem here. Do you see how my hoop won't go on? I rethreaded my machine, and for some reason the arm went all the way over, threaded the needle, and when it came back, it's too close. I can't get my frame on. Watch. There's not enough room. This is why I save everything to memory. I'm going to have to turn this off and turn it on and get the arm to reset in the right position. I've turned it back on. When I turned it on, it asked me if it was okay to recall and resume the previous memory. So I hit yes, and it brought it up right where we are, which is the fabric tack down. Let's see how we do with alignment. Do you see where the needle is? It's partway down on this second strip. Let me show you my screen. Do you see where the crosshair is? It's not right. I need to reload my design from memory and get this to set up correctly. Memory, here it is here. Let's go have a look. Now it's centered. Now it's in the right spot. But now I have to advance my design because it's starting at the beginning with the batting placement. My machine's ready at the fabric tack down. I'm in approximately the right spot. I'm going to zoom in. Let me show you how to hand crank and check your positioning. Hand crank the needle down. My stitching line is here. My needle is about a needle's width over in the other direction. So this just needs to shift just an itty bitty bit, and it should be fine. Just like that should work. Let's hand crank again. To me, that's close enough. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to stitch the fabric tack down, and then as I move between each of these, since I have them all taped together across the top and I just pulled that one, they all moved. I'm going to check them all. I didn't have them correctly lined up on top. When I put this needle down to start the mitten, it's overlapping with the snowflake. That's never happened to me before. So I would like to shift this down. So we're going to try something different today. Ideally, let's go look at our design. I want to move everything down. Let's see if I can do that. It's not going to let me from the beginning. There's my design. Hit layout, I'm going to hit move, and I want everything to go down. Hey, it worked. Let's get this to the beginning of the quilting. I'm going to go backwards because the quilting's the last step. That's the tip of the mitten right there. Let's go look and see where that's landing. I'm going to hand crank the needle down. That's better. Now I'm no longer touching the snowflake. Let's stitch out the quilting, and hopefully I've got that lined up. We want to go ahead and get our borders out of the hoop and get them separated. I've got them out of the hoop. I want to trim away the extra stabilizer. Let's take a look at where I had to make the adjustment. It looks good. It was between the snowflake and the mitten. Do you see how the threads don't match here and here? But when you just look at the border quilting, you can't tell. It's not going to make a difference. Let's look at the next one. It's closer together on this one, but it looks good. Here there's a little space. So obviously I didn't line them all up the same in the hoop. Made a little bit of variation. And here's that one. But overall, it looks good. Now if I wouldn't have adjusted this mitten would have stitched right onto that snowflake, and that would have been bad. Let's take one of our border strips and talk about trimming. We want a 1-inch finished border. If you measure between these two lines of stitching that you see on the front of your strip, put your ruler on the edge, it's 1.25 inches, because here's my 1.5 inches. If you want to trim from the front, you need to add 1/8 of an inch to each side. We used a visible thread. When I flip this to the back, if I measure from this outside line of stitching to this outside line of stitching, those are the fabric placement lines, it's 1.5 inches. The easiest way to trim is from the back. So get yourself a nice long ruler if you have one. I've got a 24.5 inch long quilting ruler. I'm going to try and straighten this a little bit, and I'm going to line up right along that outside fabric placement line because that's right where I need to trim. That's why I like using that visible thread, very helpful. And then you can double check. Here's my 1.5. I can go all the way down and make sure I'm lined up straight with my 1.5 on the other line of stitching. It looks good. I'm going to go ahead and trim that. And then I'm going to flip it around to the other side. I'm on the other side. There's where I just trimmed. I'm going to grab my ruler, and if I actually turn my ruler the other way, I have a line for 1.5. So I can use that line and line that up where I just trimmed all the way from top to bottom, and I can see that this line of stitching, there we go, is lining up right along the edge of my ruler. Make sure I've got that lined up correctly. Now I have my 1.5 inches, which is what I want, because when we sew this on with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, 1/4 inch on this side, 1/4 inch on this side, I'll have a 1 inch finished border. That looks pretty good. Now I have that extra here because I quilted more than I needed. I'm not going to cut these to length yet. I'm going to leave them long, and when we go to attach them to the pillow, I'm going to be looking at the design, where it lands, what part of the design I want to see, so I don't mind having a little bit extra. I'm going to trim my other strips. I've got these all trimmed. I'm going to set these aside, re-hoop stabilizer in my big hoop, and we're going to work on the outer borders. We'll do those a little bit faster. Let's load our files for our outer borders. We need KDQ 493 Winter 2 2-inch width. So KDQ 493 Winter 2. We need a 2-inch width, and I'm again doing a 12-inch length, 2 by 12. I'm going to hit set. I'm going to add one more. I mentioned earlier I can actually fit 3, which is fine. I could do 3 and then the second half of the 3, but then I still have to rehoop in the big hoop and do one more. So for me, doing 2 and 2 makes more sense. Save it to my machine. We're good to go. I have my purple thread on my machine. It's the color I'm going to use for the quilting, and I want a visible thread to help me trim these when it's time to get them trimmed. I'm going to move through everything for the first part of this to music because we just did this. So we'll do the first part, which is batting placement, batting tack down, trim the batting, fabric placement, fabric tack down, quilting, and then I'll rehoop and I'll go through the batting placement, tack down trimming, and fabric placement line, and then we'll pick up when we match the first part of the border to the second part, and we'll see if I can match it up better this time. Same exact thing we just did. Let's go ahead and do this first part to music. Got my second set of batting strips here with the fabric placement. My first set of strips. Let's see if I can line these up better. Looking at the outside stitching lines and getting it as close to lined up as I can, and then trying to set this line here right on top. If it's easier for you, you can do it this way and roll this way. I just find this way easier. Usually I get them lined up pretty close. But again, if it's not perfect, it's not going to matter. You can almost pull the batting away because this strip is wider. That kind of helps line that up. And then I'm checking the outside stitching lines. Looks good. And I'll do the same thing when I get to my machine where I hand crank and I check the positioning. Let's do the needle crank and see how close I got with this one. Much better. This one's slightly off. It's good enough for me. I'm going to go ahead and start the quilting on this, and while this is going, we're going to start assembling our pillow. If I don't start assembling while the rest of my borders are quilting, I won't get this done today. So you'll be hearing the machine running in the background. Once these are done, I actually have to do another set of borders. My first set of border strips is done. You can tell these don't line up, and let me show you why. If you get really close right here, do you see this? The line of the hill isn't quite matched up. You know it's not going to bother me. If that bothers you, you need to be extra careful when you're lining up your top and your bottom strips. If it looks like it's off just by the tiniest little bit, you're going to want to reset your strips. I'm going to take these out of the hoop and let's trim these. These strips we trim at 2.5 inches because the finished size is a 2-inch border. This is a 2.5 inch wide ruler. If you trim from the front, you have to add that 1/4 inch. Let's flip these to the back. I'm on the back side of the strip, 2.5 inch wide ruler. You can see it lines up right along those fabric placement lines on either side, giving me the 2.5 inch wide border strip. That's a real easy way to trim these. I'm going to trim the rest of my strips, and I'm going to work on my other set of border strips while we continue to piece the top. I hope the machine won't be too loud in the background. I apologize if it is, but I want to get this done so I can post the video for everybody. I'm on page 35. We're going to start by lining up filler blocks and snowball blocks. If you've cut yours per the instructions, you want to line up a filler block A, snowball, filler block B, snowball, and then over here, snowball, filler block B, snowball, and filler block A. My filler blocks are all different fabrics, so it really doesn't matter which A, B, which goes where. Let me line those up. Here's my lineup. I've got a filler block, snowball, filler block, snowball, and then over here, the row starts with a snowball block. Snowball, filler, snowball, filler. Make sure your mittens are all pointing the same direction. You're going to put them together, sew with a 1/4 inch seam, and then press everything open. These 2 rows are sewed and pressed. I'm going to go ahead and set these aside for the moment. For the next section, if you haven't sewed together your snowman, you want to do that. We already did that. We're going to attach that to the filler snowball combo, the one that starts with the filler block. Because I put a little skirt on mine, I'm going to want to make sure that I get this up and out of the way very lightly tape this because I don't want the tape to get stuck when I pull it off the tool. I'm going to grab my piece filler block snowball combo that starts with the filler block on the left. You want to line this up along the bottom of the snowman block. Make sure those mittens are pointing up. Right sides together, and then sew with a 1/4 inch seam. I've got that attached. It didn't want to press open. It really wanted to press this way, and since this is a pillow and we don't have to do stitch in the ditch, I went ahead and let it press that direction. The next section is right here on page 35. I'm going to grab my piece block, snowball block row. This one starts with the snowball. My mittens are pointing up, and then I need to think about placement of my pinwheels. I have 2 pinwheels, a pink pinwheel and a purple pinwheel. My snowman, my snow lady, the background is pink. So when I place this pinwheel, I want to put the purple one there. And then the pink one is going to go down here. My cocoa block is going to go here. I'm going to have let it and then snow, let it, snow, and then the mittens block pointing down. Let's talk about how to put this together. Your top row here is already put together. I'm going to sew these together and attach it to that. Next, sew the let it to the snow, the pinwheel to the mittens, and then attach these together, and then attach everything together. You'll use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Press open if you can. Again, it's a pillow. It doesn't really matter. If any of the fabrics are fighting you, just let them press whichever direction they want to go. I've got this sewn together. I want to go press it. Just a reminder, this is glitter vinyl. Don't put your iron on top of that glitter vinyl. You can press from the back, or if you want to press from the front, make sure you cover those marshmallows. Here's the top section. I've got my pinwheel and my mittens, my let it snow, which is slightly crooked, but you know what? I want to get this done, and I'm going to sew it together crooked, kind of to prove a point that it's still going to look good when it's done, because it's a pillow, and honestly, I don't think anyone's going to notice. I'm going to sew these 2 pieces together, and then press those, and attach it here. Here's this section sewn together. What I did was, this part here was a little bit too high that way, so when I attached this part, I just kind of folded it down and fudged it and worked it in. So now it looks straight. It's not crooked anymore. Now I need to attach this to this. I did take a little bit extra time and press this open because we had a seam bumping here and here. I've got this section put together. That went together really well. You want to grab your snowman, snow lady, and that's going to go right here next to it. So if you've got a little skirt like I do, hair, anything extra, make sure to get that tucked out of the way. You want to match up this seam right here. We'll go right sides together and sew a 1/4 inch seam. I've got this seam sewn. I pressed it to one side. I started trying to press it open, but it was fighting me, so I just let it press to the side. Again, pillow. Not worried about it. The next thing we're going to do is start on the inner borders. Grab a couple of your border strips. If you cut according to the instructions, you'll have 2 that are shorter. Grab those. That's what you're going to need. What you want to look at is this has words on it. How do you want this to display? I'm going to have mine like this. So here's the top. I can read it here, and then when I get to this side, it's going to go the other direction. Like that. You can see my border is longer than the actual pillow. I can play with it a little bit depending on what I want to show. It starts here with the mitten and let it snow. I can line that right up there if I want. Then it ends, let's see, right where it says snow, but I'm going to have a 1/4 inch seam allowance, so a little bit will be cut off. I want to line up a little bit before the snowflake here. Let's see. That works really well. So if I start right here before the snowflake, about a 1/4 inch, you get all of this quilting, and then it ends right before it starts to say let it. There's the little mitten and the little teacup. That's going to look really good. I'm going to try and center it to make sure I get the full teacup and the full snowflake. I'm going to flip that down and clip it. Again, being careful when I go over to the sewing machine that I don't catch the little skirt. I'm going to show you one thing I didn't do, again, because I'm in a hurry, and technically you should do. It tells you the pillow measurement. Now, granted, this is after we've attached the borders, but if you go up here, The pillow front should measure 16.5 inches squared. You really should measure it first. Make sure it's square before you're attaching your borders. I'm just not worried about it. We can measure it right now and see how it measures. Let me grab a ruler. Let's see. The bottom is over toward me. Here's 16.5. I'm the little line between 1/4 and 1/2. So mine's a little bit smaller than 16.5, which doesn't surprise me. Mine never come out exact. Let's flip it around this way just to make sure it's square. And I'm measuring right about the center of the pillow. Line that up, and it's hard because the clips are on it. It's pretty close, but I actually think it might be a little longer than wider. But again, pillow, I'm not going to trim it. I'm not going to square it up. We're just going to put it together today and see how it turns out. The side borders are on and they're pressed. I need to trim off any extra. What I want to do is line up a line on my ruler with the seam, and normally I say across the top because in theory this should be straight, but I can tell it's not straight. I'm gonna go with the seam. You can see right here this kind of goes straight, and then this block, I either didn't trim it correctly or when I attached this I didn't sew it on correctly, but that's okay. We're going to have another border. Everything will end up even. So I'm going to line up this line here along that seam, and I'm going to use the top of the snowball block here. Oops, I need to move it down a little bit. I need to rule it across where I want to cut. Line that up, line that up. So I know my border is going to be cut correctly. Make sure I've got this straight. And my fudge factor in here is within 1/4 inch. So when I attach my top border, I need to make sure that I attach it like this. There's a little bit of empty space there, but it'll get caught in that 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to grab another border strip, make sure that the words, they're facing so you can read them. This is the top of the pillow, and I want to look at how I want to line this up. I'm going to line up, it's actually the edge. I'll go ahead and trim it, and we'll just line it up right there on the edge. Actually, I want 1/4 inch. I'm going to give myself 1/4 inch. So I have 1/4 inch right there. I'm going to line it up right on the edge. Right here is that spot that was short. Let me show you from the back. See how you can see a little bit of the border fabric here because this is cut crooked, but it'll get caught in the seam and this will be straight. For this border strip, I don't quite have 1/4 inch outside the mitten. It's fine. I'm not worried about it. I'm just going to cut that and make sure it's straight, and then I'll line that up and attach that border. I've got the inner borders on. It's looking really good. Let's measure it and see if I'm at, I think you're supposed to be 18.5 at this point. Yes, it says 18.5 inches square at this point. I'm going to use the center seam. Here's 18.5. I'm about 18.25, and if you're not exact, it's not going to matter. It's still going to work. Let's go across, and I'm 18.25. So I'm 18.25 instead of 18.5, which is just fine. We want to attach our big borders. These are the outer borders that are going to make the flange. I'm going to attach them the same way. Sides first, then top and bottom. I'm really hoping I'll have a long enough border for the top and bottom. I think I will. I just need to pick a point and attach. I'm going to go right there. So I'll want to clip this and attach it, and then do the same on the other side. I've got both of these sewn on. It looks great. You really have to hunt for the little spot where it doesn't match. These are sewn on and they're pressed out. I'm hoping that my border is going to be long enough. It's not. Do you see that? Rats! It matches here and it ends here, but you know what? I need a little extra. I'm going to get a clean edge here and sew that on, or this one. Ooh, this one looks like it's going to match better, and sew that on, and then let me look. Yep, then it'll be long enough. Let's pull our other one. This is because I'm working with fat quarters. I wasn't working with yardage, so it wasn't long enough. Here's where it starts. Same thing here. It's a little short, so I'm going to need to take one of these pieces and go ahead and attach it. I've got these joined. They're not perfect. How do you avoid that? You make your fabric strip longer. I should have made these strips longer at the beginning, and then I wouldn't have had that problem. This one doesn't look too bad. It looks like he's standing right in front of the tree, so I'm going to put this one on the top. That's the best looking of the two. So I need to cut off the selvage edge, and I can give myself about 1/4 of an inch. Make sure I've got it the right direction. And I'm just going to put one clip on it, and we're going to stretch this along the length of the pillow. Yep, now it's long enough, so I'll pin that, and then I'll do the same thing on this side. I've got all my borders on. Here's the little seam right up here. Honestly, I don't even notice it, especially when you put it on display. You're not going to see it. The other seam is way down here in the corner. Let's measure this. It's supposed to measure 22.5. I bet mine's going to be closer to 22, which again will be fine. Line up along the top. Yep, and when I've kind of pulled, you sort of have to almost pull it because you've got all the quilting and all the seams and everything. So let me give it a good tug. 22.25. Yep, and 1/4 inch short, which again is not going to matter. The only time I think precision may matter is if you're entering a contest. Maybe you've got a fair or something where it's going to be judged, but I don't do anything like that. This is going to be about 22, I think. Yeah, that's going to be about 22, so it's not quite square. The next thing we're going to do is attach the backing. We're on to our backing. You should have 2 pieces cut according to the instructions. We just did this in the In All Things Give Thanks videos. I'll link those below, so I'm going to move through it a little bit faster. But what you want to do is fold over one of the long edges. I believe it says 1/4 of an inch. Yes, it says 1/4 of an inch. I never really worry about that. We'll have plenty for the envelope back, so if you want to measure 1/4 of an inch, you can. I usually just fold it and take it to the iron. And then after you press it, you're going to run a top stitch along it. You want to do that on both pieces. So I'll go do that and bring it back and show you what that looks like. Here's my 2 back pieces. There's the top stitch. I'm closer to 1/2 inch folded over. It's going to be fine. We're going to attach these to our pillow. In the instructions, it has us overlapping the fabrics on top and bottom. I do mine side to side. However you want your pillow to open on the back is how you want to lay these down. Right side down, so right sides together, with the folded top stitched edge in the center. Like that. You can pin or clip both sides and go all the way around. I like to work in halves. I feel like I get a better result. So what I like to do is do 1/2 first and then do the other half. I feel like I get a better result. I take a little bit more time doing that. If you've got a little skirt, make sure you're not getting that caught. So I'm going to clip and sew on 1/2, and then I'll clip and sew on the other half. 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around. Once your backing is sewn on, you can clip the corners if you like before you turn it right side out. Now we're ready to flip it right side out. You've got the nice big opening. Be careful if you've got a little skirt or any extra embellishments. We're going to flip it. I have this clover point turner, works really well. It's sharp but not too sharp. I want to try and get them poked out, you know, as good as possible, but I never obsess over the corners. I've got this turned right side out. Before I do it's like almost like a stitch in the ditch to create the flange. I want to take this over to my ironing board and sort of curl the back fabric to the back like that, so that I get a clean look from the front instead of that. Once you've got that pressed, make sure your corners are poked out, because once we sew for the flange, you can't get to the corners anymore. You want to take this to your sewing machine and sew right inside that seam between the inner border and the outer border all the way around. I sewed all the way around. There are some places where I got it right in the seam and you can't even see it. And there are other places, so you can kind of see the sewing, but again, pillow. And what's nice about this Fairy Frost fabric is it's very reflective, so the white will blend in. I'm going to untape a little tulle skirt here, and we're going to get that into place. The next thing we're going to do, uh-oh, I got a piece of tape stuck on that. The next thing we're going to do is attach snowflakes and arms, and then we'll get to stuff our pillow and we'll be done. Grab the picture, find your snowman arms and the snowflakes. We'll start with the arms. They have one up, one down. You can put them on any way you want. I have my little Cool Shot glue gun. It is a hot glue gun, it's just not so hot you're going to burn your finger off, but it is hot. There's that arm. That's set. And then the second arm, they have pointing down. Oh, okay. Do you remember I didn't change my bobbin thread? To make this arm look right, it needs to be like that. That's going to look kind of weird. Looks like, I don't know, she's asking for a handout or something. Maybe she wants some candy. Maybe I'll put both her arms up. Let's do that. We'll put both her arms up in the air. That'll be fine. That's too funny. I didn't even think about that. All right, so I'm going to line this up, middle of the button, put some glue down. We'll just put both her arms up. She's excited to be here. She's having a good day. To get rid of all the little glue strings, I've got the arms on, and then I can put her little pigtails down like that. That's down. I'm going to arrange her little scarf. That's looking good. And now we have our snowflakes. Now I did not change my bobbin thread, so how do you tell which side is which? This is the bobbin side. You see how it's dull? This is the thread side, nice and shiny. Let's look at where they put them. They put one there, one kind of over here, one here. Okay, I like that one there. This one here, they have it sort of overlapping the border. I'm going to bring it in a little bit, and this is going to get hidden a little bit by her skirt. So I'm going to bring it down just a little bit like that. I think that'll look good. You can put them wherever you want, and if you don't want them, you don't have to put them on. I'm going to use the glue gun, put the glue on the little round part. We're going to put one right here. I'm going to put a little bit of extra glue on the back of these arms. I don't want these to fall off. Let's get that pillow insert. You want to flip it to the back. You've got your opening. Put in your pillow. I just took this out of the packaging so it's not ultra puffed up, which is just fine. I'll put a link below to the pillow I'm using. Kimberbell also sells pillow inserts. I'll link that as well. I've got the pillow inside. Usually I find you need to kind of do this and then take a minute and get your hands in and get the corners pushed into the corner because they don't always go where you want them to go. So you might need to take a few minutes and fuss with your pillow insert. We are all stuffed. Oh, this looks great. You can hear the dogs jingling. They're just so ready to be done today. Oh, I've got a string here I need to trim, a thread. Oh, now I have lint on the tool. I'll have to pick that out. But let's move the camera so we can get a good picture of this. Here it is. Oh, doesn't she look great? I love it. Let's go in and get some detailed close-up here. I bet we'll find some threads and glue strings. That's okay. There's our little variegated palm. Our nice lacework snowflake. Got our little pigtails and our arms. They look great. Love it. The little scarf. You can spread that out to make sure we see the little button detail. Her little skirt. Let's go over this way. There's the other snowflake. The mittens. And I use flannel on the word snow. Going up, we've got another snowflake. Our glitter marshmallows look fantastic. All the sparkly Michael Miller Fairy Frost fabric looks great. Look at the borders. Remember what I told you about the borders? As you look at this as a whole, you don't see any of those spots where it doesn't line up. If you go like this, then you see it. But nobody's going to notice. Look at that cute pattern. And there's my little snowman behind the tree. Goes all the way around. Great detail. Absolutely love it. It came out great. Thank you so much for making the Kimberbell Let It Snow pillow with me. I had lots of fun with this one. Next up, we're going to work on the Snow Place tiling scene. This is from the Feeling Festive Bella box. I will link that below if you're interested in working on that project. And everyone watching gets to see the first glance of the schedule for Sweetheart Street. I'll put a link in the description box below. You can download this and print it for free. It's a little blurry because I made this in a program called Canva, and I picked a small template and then I blew it up so it got a little blurry. We're going to start on January 2nd. Gathering our supplies and working on fabric prep. I do have a fabric kit for this, courtesy of Kimberbell and Maywood Studios. Thank you for that. And then we're going to work through January and just in the beginning of February, a couple of things every week, and we'll have it done in time for Valentine's Day. And just a reminder, starting in January, I will be participating in the Applique of the Month Club next year. These are table runners. I'll link this below as well. And we'll have Hoop Studio and Perfectly Pieced. I have a very exciting project coming for the whole entire year for Perfectly Pieced. Stay tuned. Watch for the announcement for that. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and share. And I hope you've enjoyed making the Kimberbell Let It Snow pillow with me. I'll see you next time.